Well, I knew it was going to happen one day. I've finally been caught. I never thought I was going to have to say this to you, but, well, I'm a scammer. It's true. Or is it? Let's dive into it on another edition of The Woggers Way.
Welcome back, my friends. I'm Uncle Brian with Woggers General Services in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was recently called a scammer. But before I go into what brought this on, let me tell you that you're really going to want to watch the final outcome to this story. It's a good one. Now, a little background on my company. Now, I started this company 14 years ago. And in the past 14 years, I have built the business on my reputation on referrals only. I do not advertise. If you're good at what you do, provide outstanding service at a reasonable price, and you treat people and employees with respect, you don't have to advertise. Now, when I started this company in 2010, it was during the market crash. Banks were taking huge losses for stupid loans they were making, and not just on the housing market, but in the automotive sector as well. Record numbers of repos were happening, foreclosures were going through the roof, houses were selling at record lows, people were losing their jobs. The economy just sucked. No one thought that opening a company at that time was a smart idea or could sustain itself. Well, not only was I able to sustain the business, but it grew quite rapidly. I mean, I'm still here after 14 years, right? That's because it was a need. People who had some money were now able to afford a home because, well, they were selling at a fraction of what they were just a year prior. Investors were also taking the advantage of the opportunity to increase their rental property portfolios, and flippers were just having a heyday. Now, the bad part, there were so many fly-by-night contractors and handymen also taking advantage of the situation. People were getting burned left and right by these so-called contractors. Now, many of the foreclosures were damaged already by disgruntled people that were losing their homes. And on top of that, the banks were, they were just taking forever to sell them off because, well, they didn't want to take the huge losses. So the homes just sat there vacant for long periods of time. And they were getting run down or getting broken into, they were getting damaged, and they were getting vandalized. Now, people who lost their jobs decided that, well, because they owned a hammer and a drill and watched, one too many episodes of home improvement shows on TV, well, they could cash in on the situation by saying that they could do the work. Of course, that resulted in shoddy work being performed or jobs never getting completed because this wave of contractors had no clue on what they were doing. Realtors and property managers were in dire need of competent workers. People were buying homes that needed them to be fixed up. People who could sell their homes needed work done on them so they can get a better selling price. And property managers needed service companies to handle the day-to-day maintenance needs of the rental properties that they were managing. Now, while I also do work for the general public, the majority of the work for this company, it's rental properties. We handle pretty much everything as far as day-to-day maintenance issues as well as turns. Now, a turnover is taking a property after a tenant moves out, getting it ready to be re-rented. Now, this can be just, maybe fixing a few things that need to be repaired, maybe some touch-up paint, all the way up to a full, makeover or what we call a rehab. This could mean new floors, fully painted inside and out, maybe new or refinished cabinets, maybe some new plumbing and lighting fixtures, along with improvements and other repairs that need to be done. Now, landlords don't want to spend a lot of money on rental properties. That's not a secret. But they do need repairs done right and to code if applicable, and to provide a safe living environment, because if there's one thing a landlord hates more than spending money, and that's to get sued, because that costs them money also. Now, I'm very proud to say that in 14 years we've never been sued, and none of our clients have ever been sued for any work that we've done. Now, I credit that to the philosophy I base my business on. Don't just do it right, but do it better. Even on my invoices in the back of them, the very first paragraph is our quality workmanship guarantee, which states, fast, reliable, trustworthy, courteous, attention to detail, complete cleanup of construction debris with no mess, spills, or splatters left behind after we are finished with your property. Now, if any portion of the work we conduct is done by any of our professionally qualified and licensed referred contractors, we extend our quality guarantee to any work performed by them. That means if we don't do the work and I sub anything out, my guarantee carries over onto whatever work they perform. Now, it goes on to say, should you discover any problems or issues with the work we perform, we will return as often as necessary to correct any issues to your satisfaction. Now, our business is based on trust, loyalty, and referrals by our clients, and we will strive to maintain that relationship. Now, to me, these are not just words on paper, but it's how I sleep at night and how I can look at myself in the mirror during the day. Now, this work ethic was something installed to me by my parents. Since I was 10 years old, my father owned his own businesses, which us kids worked. And we were taught that not only did you work hard, but you were honest and treated your customers, employees, and vendors with respect. Now, my dad had convenience stores, and on holidays, which we were always open, like Thanksgiving, he would go work at the store so the employees could take a break and come to our house for a Thanksgiving meal. I mean, who does that? Yeah, we do. So now it goes on. Now, we were taught that if you do something, then do it well. And if you have the means and opportunity to help someone, then you do it. Now, to me, every day is a day to learn. Now, I'm constantly learning, improving, and educating myself on trying to learn better ways to do something. And I try to keep up on changes in the industries because, new products come to the market, products change, codes change, and what worked 5 years ago may not work now. And one thing I strive to do, and that's to do it correctly, because we don't do ghetto. To me, ghetto is either a Band-Aid repair to a repair done just to the point that it may work, but it's not quite right, and really there's no guarantee on sustainability. Now, every job we conduct is guaranteed. Then the last thing I want to do is worry about, damages happening because of something that we did. And I've never had to file a claim with my insurance carrier, and I don't want to. Also, we don't work for slumlords or people that want ghetto work performed. Over the years, I've had people that I have refused to do work for because, they want work done that's ghetto or would create an unsafe condition because they just want to save a penny or two. Case in point, a property manager wanted some work done on a rental property during a turn. Now, this is an old house, probably like from the 50s or 60s, and it had one of those old, double wall-mounted ovens in the kitchen, and the top oven, it was constantly warm. It wouldn't shut off. Now, I informed the client that we would have to remove the oven, be able to disconnect it, and then they could decide if they wanted to either replace it or maybe convert that cavity maybe just into a cabinet and put a door on it. And they said no. The way it was just fine because, that just meant that it worked. What? What they wanted us to do was they wanted us to remove the door to the oven and put a grate over it to act like a wall heater. Yeah, a 24-hour a day, 7 day a week, 365 day a year wall heater. In Vegas, where we get to be 115 degrees during the summertime, and you want to have a wall heater going on? Yeah, that wasn't going to happen with me. Okay. Or how about the house where the backyard was sloped down towards the house, so every time it rained, all the water would just flow down and pool up against the house, and it would eventually flow into the back door. Well, I told them that really the only right way to do it would be to rip up the backyard, regrade it, but it was all cement and they didn't want to do it because, just the cost was too high, which I understood, but you still got to get rid of the water. So I told them, let's just drill some holes into the cement along the house, put some catch basins in there with some in-ground pipes going around to the front of the house and to the curb. That'll get rid of the water. Instead, they just wanted to pour some mounds of concrete along the house, kind of like a dam. Not wanting to stop the water or stop it from pooling or collecting. They just wanted to keep it from getting into the house. So in other words, kind of like a nice big trip hazard, or maybe creating a pool there for them. I'm not sure what it was. Needless to say, I don't do work for them or the many people that want ghetto, shoddy, or incorrect work done. Now, there are plenty of people hanging around parking lots like at Home Depot that'll do whatever you want. Of course, if they screw it up, will you ever be able to, contact them again? And if you do, will they come back and fix, their mistakes for free? Or how about, will they even answer the phone when you call? Or will their phone even work again? Yeah, probably no to all those. So I just wanted you to know where I come from because I take my reputation and character very seriously. And not only from a business standpoint, but also personally. And if you notice what it says on the wall behind me under the company name, funny name, serious business. And I take my business very seriously. Okay, let me tell you why I was called a scammer. Now, on a rental property that we've worked maintenance on it for probably the last 10 years, which is handled by a property management company. It's a rental property, and we do a lot of work for this property management company. I got a call at 9 p.m. on a Saturday that the water heater was leaking all over the garage and the tenant had no water. So I called the tenant to kind of get some details. Now, I tried to inform them how to shut off the water to the water heater, to limit the leaking, and that way they'll still have some cold water for the sinks and toilets. Now, they informed me that they did that, but the water wouldn't shut off. So what they did is they just shut off the water to the whole house. So I thought, well, maybe the shutoff valve to the water heater was faulty. So I informed them I would be there first thing in the morning to, restore water to them so they can have some cold water for the toilets and sinks and stuff until I can get the water heater changed out on Monday. Since our supplier is closed on Sunday to obtain a water heater, and I didn't happen to have one in stock at the time. They were fine with that. Now keep in mind, here in Nevada, loss of water is considered an emergency, and providing water and hot water is considered an essential service. So Sunday morning, I went out there and I found out that they had shut off the valve to the recirculating system to the water heater, not the valve to the actual water heater. So they didn't shut off the water, so they thought it wasn't working, so that's why they shut off the water to the whole house. Well, I corrected that and restored water to the house, so they had some sinks and toilets to use, and then I drained the water heater. Now I drained it because if I didn't, there was 50 gallons of water in that water heater that still would drain out, and that would drain all over the garage, all over the stuff they had stored in the garage, and all over the platform that the water heater was sitting on, creating even more damage. And then on Monday, I secured a new water heater and exchanged it out. Now unfortunately, here in Las Vegas, and I'm sure it's probably other places too, they build these stupid wood and drywall platforms on which to install water heaters. These are one of the dumbest things that builders do. And if you want to know why and the damage that happens, you can click my link here at the top and I'll show you why. And some examples of the damages that happen. I'll also put a link to that video at the end of this video. Now, since the water heater leaked all over the drywall platform, the damaged drywall was removed and the OSB on the platform underneath the drywall, which is another stupid material to use in this location, had to dry out before we can install new drywall. Or in our process, we install plywood instead of drywall because, well, it's just better. Well, no matter what material was used on the platform, it still had to dry out first. Because if not, the water that was soaked into the platform, and it was saturated, would just wick up into the new drywall and ruin the drywall and end up causing mold. Same with us, putting some plywood on top of the wet OSB, the water would just get trapped between them and it would still, result in mold. So in this situation, what we did is we installed the new water heater on a steel stand off to the side until the platform can be repaired, after it dried out. Well, and being winter, it was going to take a few days, in the meantime for it to dry out. And now at least the tenant has some water to use, hot water too. Okay. And I know what you're saying. Wintertime, you're Vegas, you're like 115 degrees. Yeah, in the summertime, but in the wintertime, we still get down to freezing temperatures. So, we get the best of both worlds. You can see here how we installed some extended links for the water lines and hooked it all up. And this is just a temporary setup. It was just going to last a few days until the platform could be repaired. And the only extra charge the homeowner would incur would be the emergency service call for us to come out on Sunday to drain the water heater and restore water to this house, and then a fee to drain, relocate the water heater, and then hook it all back up from the temporary location to its permanent location on the platform. So for the emergency service call, I only billed them $158, which is about half of what that service normally would cost. But it was close to my house, and for a good client, the property management company is a good client, not the homeowner. And then to relocate the water heater after the platform was repaired, it's pretty much the same as installing a brand new water heater, except for the price of the water heater. I mean, we still have to drain it, disconnect it, remove it from where it's located, put it into a new location, and then hook it all back up again. So it's pretty much the same. And for that service, I quoted them $250, which is still less than what I normally charge. Now, the old water heater was 14 years old. It was from 2009, and that area still needed some items to bring it back up to code. And there was a recirculating system on it that had corroded shutoff valve and a corroded check valve that would have to be replaced, all that also. Now, this is where the scammer claim started. Upon notice from the property manager of what happened with the water heater leaking and the cost for repairs, the homeowner went into a rant. First, regarding that the water heater leaked, was causing damage, and the tenant had no water, the homeowner said, "Oh, that's not an emergency." To which the property manager informed him that is literally the definition of an emergency here by law. Now, the homeowner didn't care. Yeah, that's what you want. You want a homeowner that doesn't care if his tenant has legally required essential services. And while we're at it, why not just shut off their electricity and heat while we're there? I don't get it. All right, So now, once he asked how much it cost to replace the water heater, and she informed him the initial charge was $1,277, he said, well, that was too much, and he's not interested in paying that much. Well, it's not like he had a choice. I mean, it was already done. Now, other plumbers here, they start at $2,000 just for a basic swap out. Now, mine to this client starts at $999, half that. But, he's still not worried about wanting to pay it. Now, even though she sent him my initial invoice for the initial exchange, which included notes in detail on what was already performed and what still needed to be done to finish the job, he didn't even read it. He didn't even seem to care to want to read it. The homeowner then went on raging about having to repair the platform. He kept saying that new drywall should have been installed right away and the water heater put back on there right away. And when he was informed that the platform and top were so wet that placing any new drywall on the wet wood would just wick up the water and ruin the new drywall and cause mold, he didn't care. He also said that wasn't true. And he was telling a property manager that she had no clue what she was talking about and that I was screwing him and I was a scammer. When he asked her if she knew anything about construction, you got to hear her response. She literally owned this guy and shut him down. Now, what the homeowner didn't know is that this property manager also owned a construction company and knows exactly what she's talking about. Unlike him that, thinks he's smart but just, talks out of his ass. So he went on to say that the metal stand for the water heater was placed on. It was, just some kind of stupid makeshift stand. Now, once again, talking out of his ass because that stand is specifically manufactured for water heaters. It'll support about up to 800 pounds, and they're a much better option than a platform made out of wood and drywall, two materials that should never be used to place something on that will eventually leak and cause water damage and mold. But no matter what she said about this whole process to him, he wouldn't believe any of it. He even went on to say that mold inhibitors and treatments didn't even exist. I told her, tell him to Google mold inhibitors and he'll see a plenitude of products and manufacturers just for that. Heck, there's an entire industry out there solely dedicated for water damage, mold remediation, and mold prevention. On more than one occasion, he mentioned that he wasn't going to pay, to which I told her that if he said that one more time, I was going to slap a mechanic's lien on the property and then he'll definitely pay up, plus some. She even gave him my phone number so he could call me so I can explain everything, just in case there was any kind of confusion, and I could answer any questions, but like a little pouty bitch, he refused to call because he knew best and I was just screwing him and I was a scammer. So, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, I screwed him, I'm a scammer. Tenants not having water is not an emergency, and not caring that the tenants didn't have any water service. Yeah, does that sound like the kind of landlord you want to rent from? Now, after 5 weeks, what happened with the property? Absolutely nothing. Apparently, the water heater was still sitting on the stand off to the side in its temporary location. Now, the property manager had other companies go out there to, give some bids on what it would cost to finish it up. So what's the verdict with these other bids? Inquiring minds want to know. Now, before I get into that, if you like the content I'm putting out there, go ahead and tap on that thumbs up like button down below. Yeah, I tap that. And also, go ahead and click on the subscribe button for more of my helpful home repair videos. Not like these ranting ones like I'm doing today. All right, let's get into the costs. Now, here's what it would have cost if we just finished the job. So there's the initial $1,277, which included the emergency after-hour service, draining the water heater, plus the new water heater, getting it all hooked up, adding a sediment trap, aka drip leg, which is a code requirement, and hooking up some exhaust vents. And the exhaust vent service was just to create a vent tube to go from the water heater in its temporary location to the ceiling vent. Also, the HVAC system sits on the platform next to the water heater, and the exhaust tube from that HVAC system went right in front of it on top of the water heater. So I had to remove that in order to get the water heater out, and then had to reinstall that vent tube afterwards so the HVAC system, could be operated, because, it was wintertime and, they wanted some heat. But maybe they shouldn't have any heat because he didn't think they should have any water or hot water either. All right, so that... On top of that, the kicker to that with the HVAC system is the exhaust tube was incorrectly installed. Not only does it go from like 3 inches to 4 inches and then back to 3 and then up to a 6-inch Y, which is all jacked up to begin with, Also, the exhaust tube on the first elbow out of the HVAC unit, so that elbow is supposed to be installed into the exhaust tube. That way it keeps the exhaust gases from escaping into the garage, which are dangerous. Okay? But they had it backwards, where the elbow was on the outside of the tube. Not to mention that they hammered one side of the tube down in order to clear the water heater, and yeah, it was a mess. And yeah, I put all that in, my comments to the homeowner on the estimate for the completion of the job, because I did include to repair the exhaust tube from the HVAC system as part of the whole repair, because it needed to be done. I mean, if I'm going to take it out, I'm not going to put it back in all jacked up. Now, the estimate submitted for the remainder of the job was for an additional $1,534, which included the following items. Included the platform repair, which was removing the water damaged drywall, treating all the areas for mold, letting it dry out, installing a plywood overlay on top of the platform where the damaged drywall was removed. Also, installation of seismic straps, which is a code requirement. Installation of a spill pan under the new water heater with a drain pipe from the pan. Also a code requirement here if the water heater is installed in a location where damage could occur if the water heater leaks, which it is. Also, the water supply lines. That included removing the existing sweated on corrugated copper lines that were crimped and corroded, installing some copper male adapters onto the wall stub outs, and some new aluminum corrugated lines from the stub outs to the water heater hot and cold nipples. Then there's a TPR drain, which is temperature pressure relief drain, which was reconstructing the stub out from the wall with elbow, nipple on it, so a nipple on the TPR valve on top of the water heater, and then a supply line from the nipple on the water heater to the new stub out. Now, the existing line was CPVC, and it was installed incorrectly, and it had a couple major dips in the line, which is against code. Then there was a recirculating system, which was reconnecting the pump with all new copper pipes, shutoff valve, and new check valve, and a brass T to connect it to the water heater. Then there's the drain valve on the water heater. We remove the crappy manufactured drain valve and install a full port drain valve. There's also the installation of an expansion tank and all the necessary fittings for that. And then the exhaust vent tubes, which is not only installing the correct venting from the water heater to the home's vent, but also correcting the exhaust pipes that are from the HVAC system. Then we also had to disconnect the water heater from its temporary location, and then move it back onto the platform, rehook it back up, light it, and get it all up and running. So that's all included in the $1,500. Also, I gave them the option that they didn't have to reconnect the recirculating system because it wasn't needed, and because I knew he'd want to save some costs, so that would have resulted in $277 and change that he could have saved. That means it reduced the total cost down to $2533.31 for everything. That's everything. So, in other words, the initial service call, the emergency call, the draining, the new water heater, all that is included. Okay. Now let's see what it would have cost them if the homeowner decided to utilize another company to complete the job. Well, the initial $1,277 would remain because that's work that was already done. But there would be additional charges that we already performed because if we're not going to complete them, things I've already done that I hadn't charged for yet. So there was another $387 and change for work that we already performed, which included the removal of the water damaged drywall, treating it and drying it out. Then there was the removal of the recirculating system and capping it off. The cost for the metal stand that the water heater is sitting on, because if somebody else does it, we're not going to be getting that back. Also, material charge for the extra water lines and everything to hook up the water heater in the temporary location, because, well, now we're not going to get those back. I wasn't going to charge those if we completed the job because we get that stuff back. But I also gave the homeowner the option that if he used somebody else, that if he returned the metal stand and the extra water lines and everything to us, that we would credit him $85 and change, kind of like a court charge for all that stuff. So now the lowest estimate from other companies was for $1,363.50, but that didn't include the expansion tank or the correction of the vent tube for the HVAC system. So for utilizing another company, to finish the job, the total would have been right around $3,000. That's our initial $1,277 plus their charge to finish it up. So about $3,000. But remember, you're not getting the expansion tank and you're not getting the vent tube on the HVAC corrected. So if we want to compare apples to apples and take those off of my price, that would reduce me by $437 and change, which would bring my total down to $2,095.53. Okay, that's over $900 less. Now the owner can spend the additional $902.40 because, you know, he wants to be a douchebag, or he can eat some crow and have me complete it, which includes the expansion tank and the HVAC, and he'll still save $464 and change. Now, what's a homeowner going to do? Stick to his I'm superior attitude and spend over $900 more than he needs to because he's got to prove that he's right? Or will he eat the crow and save some money? So watch part 2 of this job to find out. Now there's a lot more drama coming up, so you got to watch that part. So if part 2 is already completed, I'll put a link to it right over here later on. Otherwise, you may have to check back, a couple weeks after all the dust is settled. And just a reminder, if you're new to the channel, there is Woggers Way merchandise available, and I'll put a link to it down below. And the proceeds from that help support this channel. And while you're down there, don't forget to click on that thumbs up like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Also, go ahead and drop some comments on what you think the homeowner is going to do. Remain a douchebag or eat some crow. Hey, there's a couple of videos right now that I was talking about. So something for you to watch while you're contemplating some of the merchandise you're going to get. And remember, this is your Uncle Brian saying thank you for watching and supporting my channel. I'm truly grateful, and I'll see you in part 2. Start with those right now, and I'll see you later. Bye.